Hi, it's August with Clive Coffee. As you get started researching and purchasing tools for your espresso setup, you'll probably quickly realize there's a lot of little thingies that you could potentially integrate into your workflow. Seems like every day there's a new tool that's invented that could revolutionize the way you make coffee in the morning. There's definitely a handful of these tools that I think are necessary for making this whole process fast and easy, a few that I'm not personally sold on, and a few that are somewhere in between. Let's take a closer look at some of the most popular espresso tools, see what's worth focusing on, and how they might fit into your home espresso setup. Might sound obvious, but it bears repeating that the grinder is going to be the most important tool outside your espresso machine. Having a clean grinder, a burr grinder that is espresso focused, that can make stepless adjustments if possible, is going to be very helpful. It's not as important that you have a grinder with zero retention, a grinder that grinds by weight, a grinder that is ultra fast or ultra quiet. Obviously, all these things can be really lovely, but aren't strictly necessary for making great tasting espresso. Up next is another pretty obvious tool, the coffee that you're using. Ideally, it's around 7 to 14 days off roast for the best espresso possible, but as long as it's tasting delicious, that's what's most important. The more information included on the bag of coffee, the better. You might not understand what it all exactly means, but it's a sign that the roaster knows what they're talking about and that it's been well sourced. It's not as important that the coffee you're using actually says espresso roast on the bag. You can put any coffee you enjoy into an espresso machine and it could potentially give you great results. Coffee also does not have to be particularly expensive. Again, as long as you're enjoying what you're tasting, that's all that counts. Up next is another tool that we have countless videos on already, the scale. Your scale is really like a compass when you're brewing coffee. It points you in the right direction and it does the job of getting precise, so you don't need to try to eyeball what 0.03 grams of espresso looks like. Having a scale that's accurate to half a gram, or even better, the 1/10 of a gram, is going to be really useful. As well, having a scale that's small enough to fit on the drip tray of your espresso machine so that you can weigh your shot as it's brewing is going to be very helpful. Tampers. We're looking for something that is flat and well fitted. That means that it's as tight a fit as possible in the basket of your espresso machine. As well, it should be comfortable for you to hold. Your tamper is almost like your chef's knife, and having something that feels good in your hand is definitely a bonus. It does not have to be particularly cushy, springy, twisty, or wavy, and it does not have to cost $200. Distribution tools. These can be especially helpful if you have multiple people all using the same machine and you're struggling with consistency from person to person. They are not as necessary if you already have a great grinder, as this will do a lot of that distribution work for you. There are many different types of distribution tools, from the wedge to a WDT tool. It's worth experimenting around to see what might work best for you, which might include simply just tapping around the edges of the portafilter with your palm and not even using a specific tool. Espresso baskets. These get old and dented after repeated use, so if it's been a few years since you replaced your baskets, it could be worth buying a new, fresh basket. A precision basket can be a worthwhile investment. These are machined so that every single tiny hole is exactly the same size, and it's also going to make sure that your tamper fits perfectly inside the basket. The Bottomless Portafilter. These are particularly great for posting pictures and videos to your Instagram page of your perfect shot of espresso. However, they don't actually change the flavor of your coffee. Really, the best way to think about a bottomless portafilter is that it's a diagnostic tool to help make sure that your shot is pulling as best it can. I love using a bottomless portafilter, but it's not necessarily the first thing that I'd purchase for a new espresso setup. Dosing funnels, or shot collars. These can be helpful if every single time you grind coffee, a little bit is spilling out over the sides of your espresso basket. I'm willing to bet that a better solution is to just lower your dose of coffee a little bit to avoid spilling. But if you've already tried that, it's totally worth picking up a shot collar. I find them to be incredibly fussy, but that's just my opinion. Tamping stations. I doubt that you really need this. They can be sort of nice if you use a spouted portafilter that doesn't sit super nicely on your counter, but 99% of the time they end up just being another thing that's taking up space on your counter. I do see specific situations where these can come in handy, but again, most of the time you're just not going to be using this. Tamping mats. These can be a helpful area to stage your tools and to keep your nice countertops from getting scuffed up. I think they're cheap enough that you might as well have one, but they're not going to make your cappuccino any tastier. Grinder brush. This is actually a pretty underrated tool here. Espresso is a very messy process, so having a brush within arm's reach at all times to help keep things tidy is going to be super helpful for your workflow. A spray bottle for the RDT method. That stands for the Ross droplet technique, where you mist a little bit of water over your coffee beans before you grind them. This is actually a really nice tool to have for the proud single dosers out there, as it really helps to minimize static electricity and mess when you grind coffee. If you're not really single dosing, there's not much need for you to have a spray bottle. Puck screens. The idea here is that they are more gently and evenly dispersing the water over your puck of coffee as you're brewing espresso. I've never found these to be particularly useful, only to be a huge pain to clean up after. Other people might disagree, and to each their own. The knockbox, another pretty underrated tool here. Get a big one if you have the counter space, as well as one that you can clean easily. Something that you can put in the dishwasher is always a plus. It definitely beats trying to wiggle out your spent puck of coffee over the trash can. These aren't going to be as effective, and it ends up making a bigger mess a lot of the time. Steaming pitchers, another good tool to pay attention to. Get a few different sizes and an option with measurements on the inside so you're not wasting milk. Cheaper options of steaming pitchers aren't going to be symmetrical and can actually throw off your latte art. But unless you're already a pro, probably don't blame the tool for that blobby mess that you just poured. Vacuum canisters. These are helpful for preserving the freshness of your coffee, but I find that in the world of espresso, they're not totally necessary. If you like having multiple bags of coffee open at the same time, maybe throwing some of the coffee in a vacuum canister will work best for you. And last but not least, some towels. I am sort of a weird nerd about towels for espresso machines. I go through them a lot, I switch them out a lot, and I don't use them for anything else like cleaning up spilled milk or wiping off the kitchen counter. Have at least 2 towels, one for wiping the steam wand clean and another for wiping the inside of your espresso basket out. But I promise that having a couple extras will only help in keeping this whole process as clean and easy as possible. Like I said, there's a lot of tools. You might be the kind of person who has every single one of these plus a few extras, but most likely you'll have noticed a few that you could totally use and a few that would sit in a kitchen drawer forever. Espresso doesn't need to be overly complicated, but having the right tools for the right job definitely makes the process more enjoyable. I know you'll let me know in the comments down below if I missed any tools that you can't live without. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.